In the heart of the dark forest, where the wind carried a chilling echo, there existed a realm of solitude known only to the bravest souls. Among them was Robert Jensen, a seasoned hunter with nerves of steel and a heart that pounded with the thrill of the chase. He ventured into the woods alone, on a regular basis, seeking the tranquility of nature and the elusive prey that roamed these dense woods. Robert was a lifelong bow hunter. He loved hunting deer in deep woods. He often would hike a couple miles into the woods by himself to ensure he would avoid other hunters. He would set up camp next to a huge oak tree for shade. After setting up camp, he made his way to his deer stand. The stand was roughly 10-15 feet off the ground, just enough to stay out of sight and still get the optimal shot at his prey. Robert's journey to the deer stand began like any other, with the crisp crunch of fallen leaves beneath his boots and the rhythmic swaying of branches overhead. He made his way deeper into the wilderness, his senses heightened, every sound, every movement analyzed with a sense of precision. Robert ascended his tree stand, a makeshift sanctuary nestled high above the ground. From his perch, he watched as the world transformed, the vibrant hues of day fading into the murky depths of evening. As evening began to descend upon the forest, Robert's solitude was shattered by an unsettling presence. At first it was subtle, a fleeting whisper in the wind. A few minutes later he heard a rustle in the underbrush. As he listened, it grew more pronounced, echoing through the trees like a haunting melody. With each passing moment, Robert's unease deepened, his senses on high alert for any sign of danger. But try as he might, he could not shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes followed his every move from the shadows. Unnerved but determined, Robert dismissed the sounds as tricks of the mind, the product of an overactive imagination fueled by the isolation of the woods. Yet, as the evening wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent until they seemed to surround him on all sides. Just before dark, he began to hear a footstep way off in the distance. This was not the familiar sounds of a deer, but sounded more like something with two legs. As dark approached and the footsteps grew closer, Robert's ordeal took a sinister turn. Visions danced before his eyes, flickering in and out of existence like phantoms in the night. He saw a figure lurking in the darkness, its features twisted into grotesque caricature-like in their appearance. Terrified, Robert clung to his perch, his heart pounding in his chest as the specters closed in around him. He tried to scream, to call out for help, but his voice caught in his throat, suffocated by the weight of his fear. Desperate for escape, Robert descended from his tree stand, his movements clumsy and frantic as he stumbled through the undergrowth. But no matter how far he ran, the footsteps and vision of a figure pursued him, a relentless onslaught that felt as if it threatened to consume his very soul. Exhausted and disoriented, Robert stumbled upon his campsite, a flickering fire casting long shadows across the clearing. But instead of solace, he found only further torment, as the haunting presence that had plagued him in the woods followed him to his makeshift sanctuary. As Robert cowered in his tent, the fabric began trembling as if the weight of an invisible hand was pressing on the tent. He knew that he was not alone. He heard whispers that clearly said, "Robert, I'm here," mixed with indistinguishable whispers. With nowhere left to turn, Robert huddled in the darkness, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the night stretched on into eternity. He knew that he could never outrun the horrors that lurked just beyond the tent's wall. Robert made a desperate bid for escape, fleeing into the depths of the forest in search of sanctuary. With each step he took, the darkness seemed to close in around him, swallowing him. He began to hear the footstep about a minute after leaving his tent. He had roughly 2 miles to go before he was at his car, so he knew he would have to run as fast as he could to make it. He ran until his lungs burned and his muscles screamed in protest, until he could run no more. And yet still the haunting presence pursued him, a relentless force that refused to be denied. With every ounce of strength left in his trembling limbs, Robert finally stumbled into the clearing where his car sat. Relief flooded through him as he fumbled for the keys, his fingers shaking with exhaustion and fear as he heard the loud whisper, "Robert." With a shaky hand, he unlocked the door and threw himself into the driver's seat, his heart pounding in his chest as he slammed the door shut behind him. For a moment he allowed himself to believe that he was safe, that the horrors of the night were nothing more than a fevered dream. But as he glanced into the rearview mirror, his blood turned to ice in his veins. There in the back seat sat the specter that had haunted him throughout the long, harrowing night. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, its twisted features contorted into a malevolent grin. With a scream of terror, Robert flung open the car door and stumbled out into the darkness, his mind consumed by panic and despair. He ran blindly through the woods, his only thought to escape the horror that pursued him at every turn. The specter smiled an evil grin as he exited the car and began after Robert. As the last echoes of his screams faded into the night, the forest reclaimed him, swallowing him whole in its eternal embrace. For Robert Jensen, there would be no escape from the hollow woods.